Hi guys, after a bit of artistic unwind that we had during the previous call, we are getting back to the technology, and let's greet and meet Elias Tazartes, who is going to answer a very important and interesting question: can rollups lead the innovation in the Ethereum ecosystem? Welcome.
Hey guys, can you hear me well? All good? Nice. So we're going to talk about the governance in the Ethereum ecosystem, and precisely also how can rollups lead this movement, as opposed to the approach that today is on Ethereum L1, where you have a more top-down approach or L1-led approach. So Ethereum has this interesting property of being, or aiming to be, the world computer, and wherein usually you can define layers in like 2 words. You probably can't with Ethereum. You have this funny tweet where the person was saying Ethereum is so complex, you probably cannot just summarize it or just do it in a few words. So Ethereum aims to be the world computer, and as such, you would probably want to upgrade it as you go, as you learn, and finally ossify it. But this world computer, it's going to undergo a lot of transformation until it can be stable and can be completely ossified. So today we're going to see what is the governance flow of the Ethereum ecosystem, the limits of this current flow, the multiplication of the clients, and we're going to see that this challenges the status quo in governance, the main risk, which is EVM fragmentation, and the way forward. Let's just start by defining together Ethereum. It's just the community-run technology that powers the cryptocurrency Ether and thousands of decentralized applications, the world computer. And what is governance? It's just the systems in place to allow decisions to be made. So usually, I don't know, you can think about executive team, board of directors, shareholders, project manager, and Ethereum is a bit more complex body. So if it's community run, who governs? If no one owns Ethereum, how are decisions made? And I thought this tweet was funny because Peter is the tech lead of Geth, and Dankrad is the lead researcher, one of the lead researchers of Ethereum. And they were talking about how a decision is made or is deemed relevant. And Dankrad, quite sassily, was saying the decision is his. But it's not so far from the truth. So what is actually, who knows here how a decision is made on Ethereum, like a protocol change? Okay. Who has heard about the EIP word? Who has heard about the RIP word? Okay. Interesting. So Derek Chang came up with this very simple model. It doesn't have to be so concrete, but it's just the idea that Ethereum is characterized by a set of values. They in turn get transformed into a clear vision of what you would ideally want Ethereum to be. Then this is in turn created into a roadmap, and then this roadmap is implemented by clients. So if we wanted to list the Ethereum values, I mean, they're in the air. They're not always named, but you would get, oops, OK, I'm standing in front of the, I'll go there. You would get decentralization, transparency, openness, censorship resistance, sustainability, and so on. And so the vision is you would ideally want a secure, permissionless chain where transactions are fast, they're cheap, they're secure, maybe private, and then user accounts, so identity or even credentials, is quite easy to manage. So social recovery, safeguard, all of this is also present in the spirit of Ethereum. So the values, we get the vision, and then we get the roadmap, which is a bit more chunky. So this is this idea that, OK, if we want 10K TPS, sub-cent, how do we do it? And so it looks like Ethereum did the approach of going for rollups instead of full sharding for now, and then some heavy emphasis on ZK. So this roadmap is basically, you would want rollups, you would want decentralization, so low requirements for your hardware, and then lots of ZK everywhere, aggregation, privacy, all of it. So we got values, you have a vision, now you have a technical roadmap, so how do you actually enforce it in the real life? If you are a country, how do you actually pass the laws and who is enforcing it? And this is down to the execution clients team. So you have to think, a very concrete example of this is there is a hard fork every now and then, so every 6 months or 1 year in Ethereum. This is how they call the ability to upgrade the protocol. and they have things that they want to put in it. So next hard fork is going to be Pectra, Prague, and Electra, and they think to themselves, okay, guys, we need one way to improve UX on Ethereum for EOAs, so for user accounts. So they have this idea in mind, and then from there, they're going to choose an EIP, so Ethereum Improvement Proposal, and stick it in there. So you have to think of slots. Like every now and then, there's a timing. There's a good timing, a tempo for a good improvement, and then the improvement is actually a specification that you write. So this year, they wanted to improve UX because they think that the current UX of EOAs, so user accounts, so MetaMask, is not so good. So there is this need to insert an EIP. So how do you do an EIP? You have an idea, so you think, okay, transactions should be cheaper. You transform this idea into concrete code or ideas for the specification. This is called the EIP. Then you need to champion it, so you need to push it. And then the core devs of the Ethereum, so Geth, Nethermind, Bezu, Erigon, Reth, Ethereum.js, they have a voice, and they're going to debate in a Discord call. It's quite, it's not so formal as voting for a president. But they will gather in a call or a Zoom, and they will say, okay, guys, I think this EIP really nails the goal of changing this. So a current example is the EIP 7702. They want this achieves better UX. We don't have to go into precise deal, but this is how it works. So you have the vision, the values, the vision, the roadmap, and then some precise law, or like EIP, will fit into this roadmap and enforce what the roadmap is about. So Ethereum wins. This is a flawless process. This is very well constructed, and what is the problem? First problem is you're making changes that take time and need governance, you need everyone to buy in, but you don't know if this will last. So one example is that there was an EIP to add a compression function on Ethereum, and actually no one used it ever. So you would get, this has been used 1,000 times since it was inserted like almost 8 years ago. And there's like millions and millions of transactions. So this is really like a loss of resources, loss of time, and it's so weird. Like I don't know, it feels a bit like you would probably want to try something out before putting it, enshrining it in your protocol. So in my mind, I would like, even for countries, it's weird that we can pass laws without ever trying them. I read that some countries want to try to have laws be passed in specific cities. They try them for 2 years, and if it works, they put it for the whole country. I mean, this feels like you're dealing with common sense or first principles, but it's really not easy because when it comes to governance and code and the Ethereum protocol, everything is a bit more complicated. The other way that this process is not perfect is EIP 3074. We don't have to go into very strong details, but you have to imagine that this EIP was imagined 4 years ago, and it was scheduled for inclusion this like a month from now. So it took a few some time to mature in people's mind. They submitted it, and it got scheduled for inclusion 4 years after. So what is the chance of it not being relevant anymore? Well, quite high, because it got scheduled for inclusion by the core dev team, but the teams that are working not on the protocol but are working on product. So you have to think smart wallet teams. They said, wait, guys, this EIP is really against our vision for the Ethereum account abstraction experience. So when you hear the word account abstraction or in Ethereum, you have to think the difference between MetaMask, which is EOA, and account abstraction. You have to think more about a wallet on your phone. You sign with your Face ID. You never have to interact with 12-word seed phrase. This is more like Web 2 experience and like a social graph, privacy, like all those things baked in, or at least a place for it. And so after this EIP got voted in, so it was supposed to get coded and get included in the testnet, it was actually superseded by 7702. So at the same time as the core devs voted yes for this, the community pushed back, and they had to go back on it. So it's a bit weird. Ideally, you would want the pushback to come before, first of all. Second of all, you would need to have good numbers on why the pushback is justified or why the law is justified. Like everyone is thinking out of suppositions, or just they're comparing very abstract EIPs, and they're comparing the ups and downs ex post. So they're thinking 6 months in advance, 1 year in advance. What will this do? And because Ethereum adopted the rollup-centric roadmap, now you have a bunch of rollups which are faster to adapt, faster also to be able to change stuff, and they represent a good field for people to try out new ideas. And this feels a bit like this idea of having cities that can try new laws before the whole country adopts them. So this is why some of the people in Rollups came up with this idea. It's not Ethereum improvement proposal anymore, it's Rollup improvement proposal. And it's more like a bottom-up approach. So the good example is the Clave team. They're working on account abstraction, and they wanted to add to Ethereum the ability to verify a Face ID signature, or like secure enclave. So to make it cheaper and more available to anyone. So yeah, I proposed the EIP 7212. It's hard to say all the EIPs. If you go to a Zoom call from all core devs, you will hear them like use all of the numbers all the time. They're like, oh yeah, this is a 5678. No, it's a 75771. And it's really, you cannot understand anything. It feels like everyone is reciting Wi-Fi codes, but it's actually low proposals. So they made this into a RIP, and while this has not been adopted on mainnet, so you will not be able to verify easily Face ID signatures on mainnet, L1, you can actually verify Face ID signatures on more than 4 rollups. So I don't want to make mistakes, but I think Polygon has it. Probably zkSync, Kakarot, it's on base Sepolia, and I will need to check for Linea. But the main idea is that a rollup is inherently more flexible than the mainnet, and this can be good. And then you can probably imagine that the merge or danksharding, which was the main change for the Ethereum protocol, they are not so adapted for rollups because they're like hefty and they're a way to rethink the infrastructure of Ethereum. But for smaller things like precompile, ERCs, transactions type, AA infrastructure, it makes sense that you would try them out on rollups before trying to implement them on mainnet. So can devs do something? I mean, this feels like, from the beginning of this talk, we're dealing with common sense, or at least first principles, and people in Ethereum are very, very practical and smart, and they often go for like path of, if not least resistance, the path that makes sense. So they try to do things that make sense. And so if it's so simple, why is no one doing it? Why is no rollup pushing for like very brave or at least spearheading innovation? There's actually one unknown limitation, which is that, so who here knows a bit about the clients team? You have to think of the clients team, they are kind of the guardian, or they safekeep the software. So when you think about Ethereum, you have to think that there is software behind, and there are teams that implement it. It so happens that Ethereum has many clients developed. So there's Geth, Bezu, so Geth is a team that is supported by EF. Bezu is pretty much, for those who are dev, is just you write the Ethereum protocol in Golang, then you write it in Java, then you write it in Rust, and then you have many clients. And then those teams, they are also part of the governance the governance decision. It just so happens that the Geth team is dominant in terms of mindshare or market share or TVL. And so if you look at it, so if you know the rollups name, so Arbitrum, Optimism, Scroll, those rollups are based on forks of Geth. What does that mean in practice? It means that in practice, if they want to innovate on the protocol level, they have to write code on the Geth client that will just implement their idea. So I don't know, they want to increase, they want to add a new type of signer, they have to write the code on Geth. And in practice, what this means is that they need to either make their own implementation farther away from the Geth implementation, so they're going in uncharted territories, or it means that they have to ask the Geth dev to do it for them. The Geth dev, not only do they have limited bandwidth, they're also very conservative, which makes sense. And the devs that forked Geth, so imagine the Arbitrum team, they want to implement something new, they're going to be extremely careful because they have hundreds of billions on their chain, or maybe dozens. I don't remember the TVL of Arbitrum, but it wouldn't shock me if it's 100 billion. And any change is extremely risky. It's not like they have the client diversity or they don't have the leeway. So Rollups team don't want to fork away from Geth. Geth doesn't want to implement the innovation. No innovation. And this is changing. Actually, now that you have more Rollups clients, so more Rollup stack, you can innovate once more. You don't have to rely on someone else to say whether or not you can innovate. So 3 examples of this is EF, so Ethereum Foundation, sorry. There's a lot of acronyms. Ethereum Foundation created their own specification. So they wrote Ethereum in a very simple Python repo that is open source. So if you want to say, OK, from now on, I don't know, Ethereum, I'm going to change this protocol thing. What else? I'm going to make gas 10 times cheaper. Why not? You're a rollup and you want users to have subsidy, so you make some operations cheaper. You go there, you fork the repo, you try it out. You can experiment very easily, and it's quite easy. It's in Python, it's very fast. In one day, you can implement an EIP, play around with it, ask some people to have a look at it, so it's becoming very much accessible. Reth is an implementation of Ethereum protocol in Rust, and they released many things that make it very easy for people to experiment as well. So AlphaNet is a REST-based ORU, optimistic rollup, framework, and they can extend the EVM very easily as well. So you have to think that if you like to tinker around, this reduces the friction and the hardship by 1 or 2 orders of magnitude. And Kakarot is a good example. It's my shilling moment. It's a ZK EVM written in Cairo, but because Cairo is so high level, Cairo is a ZK DSL. This allows the Kakarot to be a ZK EVM as opposed to the 2 above clients, which are just EVMs. This also means that because there are new client implementation, you can play around, and you're not limited to just one implementation. So new actors are less dependent on Geth. So if you're on Arbitrum and you want to create a new transaction type, you can play around with new implementations. But the main risk, and I think this is what I still don't have an answer about, is EVM is strong because of the moat of the network effect. Everyone knows Ethereum, and if you develop on Solidity, the strength is that everyone knows what you're doing, and you can choose a chain, kind of like a commodity, or not even a commodity, you have a trade-off. So if you're fine with somewhat reduced security, but very fast transaction, and maybe low price, high liquidity, strong community, you might go on base. If you want strong security, you stay on L1. There's so many trade-offs, and this is what makes EVM like the leader of the mindshare of the current market, because the base layer is not opinionated, and all of the tools are reusable. So let's take a real example. After RIP 7212, so you're a dev, and you want in your dApp, and you want to be able to use Face ID. This is quite normal. Maybe you want to have a checkout in your ticketing service. So you write your Solidity contract, and you put in the Solidity contract, now call the Face ID verifier. You don't know which chain supports it or not, and you cannot know at the time of deployment. So maybe you choose a chain that supports it, but this is like the first step in EVM fragmentation, and this might continue. So my main worry, and the thing I most certainly don't have an answer about, is how to limit as much as possible EVM fragmentation, and how EVM fragmentation really goes against the client diversity ethos of Ethereum, and also the moat. My main concern is more about the moat. So EVM ecosystem moat, this idea that everyone knows the same language, everyone can deploy on any chain, there is no vendor lock-in, there is global governance. This goes down as fragmentation increases. And so I genuinely don't have a solution. Governance is really hard. I've started to join roll calls and all core devs calls, so the governance bodies of Ethereum, and it's almost a full-time job to follow what is happening. It's a second full-time job to understand what is being discussed. So every single area is a rabbit hole that could take a whole life. So there is a rabbit hole about how to design good mempools, how to safeguard decentralization. This would take probably 1 year of the engineer to even get up to speed on how to understand these things. And this is one example out of 100. Then there is new way to store data. So if you were at the fireside chat with Vitalik, he mentioned Hexary Patricia Merkle trees. And then everyone's like, yeah, sure, okay. He, on the top of his mind, made calculation on the maximum size of the proof size of proving that you are included in the slot of this tree, but this is not accessible to most people. The Verkel tree discussion, this has already taken 2 years, it will take 2 more, and you expect Rollups team who have limited bandwidth to jump in and express their opinion. It's quite hard. So even though in first principle you would want the governance of Ethereum to start in Rollups, because they are essentially the closest to the users, and they are also the closest to the devs that are building dApps as opposed to building protocol. This is quite hard. So my view, and it's quite utopian, is that most improvements should start on Rollups, actually. I hope that this works out for 2 reasons. One is Ethereum needs to ossify, and because it needs to ossify, I think it's fine to let Rollups innovate, and whatever innovation survives gets adopted on L1. Like, this also feels good. Also, Rollups have like small community and they have good feedback loops. So I think this also approaches. And one thing, maybe it doesn't apply so much, but there's a Verkel tree upgrade. And maybe I'm wrong, but I heard Matt from the old core dev that said that this will take 18 months of L1 core devs kind of, this is a major upgrade, so kind of the merge. And I think that if L1 devs are busy, they will have stuff to do, so it will leave us, the Rollups, kind of the reins to innovate. So it's not so bad. It's like, we have a saying in French, I don't know if it translates, but it's, while the cat is not here, the mice dance. So this is what I think. And then my second belief is that EVM fragmentation must be limited. So I actually talked to Yoav today, and I don't know. So there are some challenges. So if you have RIPs, it means that Rollups innovate. Then you have this question. What is a rollup, and can you actually form a cohesive body of rollups that form like a union? Like, are you thinking European Union, confederated states? Like, what is this? So if a RIP got adopted, how do you force Base to adopt it? Can you do it? In L1, it's more simple because there is the spec, and you have to go through the core devs, and they are kind of the last gatekeepers of what gets into Ethereum. Interestingly, I don't know if you guys realize, but Ethereum is different from other places or DAOs, or I don't know, but it's not because you hold a ETH that you can have one vote in what happens on ETH. It's quite not. If you hold one ETH, you hold one ETH, and you trust that the core devs who build the client have good philosophical views on the world, they have good talent of devs, they have good way to create an EIP, and they have good ways to communicate why the EIP should be merged. But you have to think that because you are an Ethereum holder, you believe in the values of Ethereum. Because you believe in the values, you can see that the people who push the vision are good. You can look at the roadmap and participate, so it's not gate kept. Like, you can enter and participate to any code whenever. But at the end of the day, it's the devs that vote. So it might look like a democracy, and I don't mind that it's not, but it's not. And so RIPs face the same problem. Like, is this a democracy? Probably not. RIP, as it stands, is Kakarot can go and say, okay, I have a new idea. I have a new transaction type where I can batch many transactions. I will create a RIP, and I will adopt it on my chain unilaterally. Everyone agrees. Everyone says no. I say I don't care. It still happens. Like, no one can force you not to adopt a RIP or adopt it. There are 2 safeguards for RIPs. One is that you would get buy-in from L1, that from the time you push a RIP, the L1 should not do its own governance piece, so EIP, that clashes with it, because this would be pretty bad. So you have to think RIP has at least the guarantee that L1 mainnet, so Ethereum, will not go against it. Second guarantee is if the RIP has buy-in from other chains, you also know that if they won't adopt the same goal with different means. So you have to think of, I don't know, native account abstraction on zkSync and Starknet does not respect any standard way of doing it, and 4337, which is the Ethereum account abstraction, respects a certain standard. So the second buy-in from RIPs from rollups is that you should respect a standard, and if you agree with some certain governance decision at the rollup level, you should fall in line with that specific implementation. Or not implementation, but at least the spirit of it. APIs and so on. And I think in a few years, this is my conclusion, is that rollups will be ZK, and you will, because of the prover system and also like standardization of maybe processes, I don't know, but I see it as everything is narrow because every governance is on L1. Now, governance design space is huge because it's all on the rollups, and it's going to narrow down later on in a few years when the ZK like infrastructure of rollups and mainnet converges to what is called like, I don't know, this type of type 1 ZK VM or even just ZK VMs in general. So prove everything, ZK snark everything, and I think this is very present in the Ethereum ecosystem. That's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Alice. We still have a couple of minutes for quick question, if any.
So maybe I missed this because maybe I think I'd come in after you had started, but what's the current stage of Kakarot and the company and your protocol?
So Kakarot, for those who don't know, it's a ZK VM based on the Starknet stack, and it's on testnet. But for example, when the EIP for the EIP 3074, the one I talked about in the beginning, was adopted on L1, so scheduled for adoption, we actually implemented it instantly on the testnet. And I think that was a good example of a very cool thing where rollups can actually kind of front-run L1 for things that are scheduled for inclusion, which is very nice because you can try some updates really fast. But it's also the first example of a fumble. We fumbled because we adopted the EIP. The first week it was scheduled for inclusion, and then it got cancelled. So this is one example of what you don't want to do when you're a rollup, or you have to be careful about, is this the fine line you're walking on when it comes to governance. You want to be reasonably sure that what you're doing will either end up on L1 or will not be clashed by L1. And you also want all the rollups to follow you. So this is this kind of tension you have to play. Maybe there is incentives, maybe there is not, maybe there is this FOMO idea. If one rollup adopts the new killer feature, everyone will follow. So there is these tensions that you have to play around. And one thing I will say is we need the processes probably in Ethereum L1 governance to become more, if not transparent, more smooth, or at least have more input. And also for rollups, we need this push for streamline and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to quickly ask, based on your experience and acute knowledge with different rollups and governance, what do you currently find to be the best method of incentivizing and rewarding developers and activity for different chains?
So for a chain to incentivize devs, so devs that build smart contracts. It's a very hard question. I genuinely don't know. I found that for me, my favorite thing is entrepreneurship programs. So like entrepreneurship studios buy rollups. I think this is, when you're a rollup, I will say this, you want to maximize the number of teams that build on you. So entrepreneurs that build businesses. And from there, you can have it because you have mindshare. So many devs participate in a hackathon. Maybe your token is expensive. Maybe they're degen spending on your chain. But at the end of the day, you want people to come and build. So for this, probably a mixture of a smart grants program, but you don't need to write checks like so many of them. Retrofunding, entrepreneurship program, and good airdrops.
Thank you. Thank you, Alice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.